grew up with brothers and sisters knows all about the familiar battles of sibling rivalry.
You know, and as parents, we want to try to minimize that drama with our own children. Parenting expert AMY McCREADY joins us now with some great strategies. Amy, thanks for being with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We were all just chatting. We all grew up with siblings, and now we have our own children, so we're trying to do better than we might have done as children, right?
Absolutely. And it just pains us to hear our kids fight, doesn't it? Because you want them to be best buds. You want them to get along great. But when you hear that fighting from the playroom, it just, grates on your nerves.
So what is a good strategy? Because like we compared ourselves to the rhesus monkeys, and I'll be the first to admit it, when I'm trying to cook dinner, the boys are in the living room, they get arguing on something, and I'm not turning around. I'm kind of ignoring it. But if I had a guest over, I'd be running in the living room. Now, boys, what is the right strategy?
Well, there are a couple of kind of do's and don'ts, and it was so funny, that story with the monkeys. If you kind of like leave the tantrums alone and don't give them a whole lot of attention, they kind of go away. Same thing with sibling rivalry. If you give it a whole lot of attention, it's going to make it continue. But our gut instinct is to get involved. Again, we don't want to hear them fight. It's loud. It's annoying. We want to, kind of make it stop. So the first of the 3 strategies is to ignore the fight. And it's so hard, I know.
Hard. Even in public?
Well, in public that may be a little bit different. But most of the fighting probably happens at home anyway.
Yes, or in the car.
Yes, in the car.
Does it matter what they're fighting about? Because my point, I guess, being more, do you think are they always doing it sometimes for attention from you, just in general, and sometimes they really legitimately are having an issue with their brother or sister that maybe you need to kind of intervene on?
Yes, and there are different strategies depending on the situation, but really, probably 85%, 90% of the time, it's to get your attention. And that's what happens. They fight, we get involved, so they get a lot of attention for a negative behavior. So really, as hard as this is, the very best thing that you can do is ignore the fighting. But you want to let them know up front and say, you know what, you guys are really growing up, and I have confidence that you guys can work out a lot of your own differences, so I'm not going to get involved anymore.
So you actually say that?
Yes, and that's really important. Story. Yes, because you have to let them know that you have faith that they can work it out, and then when they start fighting, you ignore it. If you're in the same room, you just leave the room. If you're down the hall, don't go down and see what's going on. As hard as that is, and you have to resist the urge.
Unless there's physical violence, right?
Yes, and of course you're not going to let them get to the point where they're duking it out. But what happens when you ignore it is that it removes the payoff of attention, and it gives them the opportunity to kind of work through those skills. They have to learn how to resolve conflict. And if we never give them the opportunity, if we always step in and do that for them, it kind of says, hey, I don't really think you guys can work it out. You need me to come in.
So when you do come in,
you're the facilitator. You're just intervening as the facilitator. That's the second strategy.
Right. So if you find that they are just not working it out, or it's coming to like physical blows, then you need to intervene. But we don't want to go in and act as judge and jury. Figuring who did what and who's at fault and what the punishment
how do you keep them? Because what do they do? What's the first thing they always say?
It's his fault. His fault.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to say, you know what? I'm not concerned about who started it or who did what to whom. All I care about is how we're going to solve this problem. So what ideas do you guys have to solve this problem?
Okay, so let's say they're fighting over the Wii remote.
For example.
Never happened
in my house. But that's a great example. So again, not concerned about who started it, but what ideas do you guys have to solve this problem, and then zip it.
And make them think.
Yes. Okay, and so they'll probably still give you a little bit, no, he started it, she's not interested. What ideas do you have? Because that's what we want to do, is get them to the point.
Teach them how to solve it.
Yes, because they have to be able to resolve their own conflicts. So you still may get some blank stares. So you can say, well, what do you think would happen if you picked the game first and then you picked the second game? Or you had it for 5 minutes and then you had. So you could give them some options, and hopefully they'll get on board with one of those options.
They'll choose one of those options.
Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Do you ever take the older child aside and sort of say, be fair, your little brother or your little sister doesn't get this like you do? When is that appropriate?
Well,
or is it never, maybe?
For the under 3s, because these strategies are really better for 3 and older. You can put in your notes for us. And we're battling with my almost 3-year-old. At this point, my poor older son always feels like he has to give in.
Yes.
Well, I'll just go ahead and give in because you're going to let him have it anyway, kind of thing. And I feel terrible.
And that's not fair to him.
It's not.
And so you kind of have to set up some parameters. So for instance, if your older one is playing with something and he wants to play with it on his own, let him go to his room and say, if you're playing in your room, you have permission to close the door and you can play without being interrupted. You know, our kids deserve that they can play with something uninterrupted without the toddler interrupting them. So there's some different things that you can do to sort of control the home environment so they can do that.
All right, the all in the same boat strategy. I've had to do this.
Yes, and it's very effective. So think about where we've been. We've ignored the fight, all right, but then we did have to intervene as facilitator. Now, if they couldn't come up with a solution to solve it on their own, or they wouldn't agree to one of the ones we suggested, then we know it's time to move to strategy number 3, which is all in the same boat. Everyone gets the same consequence. So again, it doesn't matter who started it. All right, if you guys can't agree on a way to play with the we together and share it, well then everyone loses the privilege. So it takes away the winner and loser. I didn't say that, well, you're the oldest, you need to give in, or you had it first. There's no winner and loser. If you guys can't come together and cooperate on a solution, then everybody loses the privilege. So it's in their best interest to try to cooperate and work it out together.
That's how we lost our swing set privileges.
There you go.
Growing up, I remember vividly the days of no swing set for anybody because I kept getting pushed off. It was not my fault, Amy, clearly. It was my fault. But we lost our swing set.
Oh, Amy, I wish I could just have you come over for a day and just hang with us. Be like the super nanny.
With sibling rivalry, we've talked about 3 strategies, but there's really so much more with sibling rivalry. But these 3 strategies will get parents started, and they'll really start to see a difference if they just kind of go along that course.
Yeah. Nice. Well, to learn more about Amy's great strategies, you can go to our website, which links to her website with her company, Positive Parenting Solutions. Amy, thank you so much as always.
Thank you so much.
Here's to our kids getting along.
Exactly.
Exactly.